Hello. All right. We are still on our Highway 49 road trip, and we are here in Coloma at the gravesite of James W. Marshall. Excuse my appearance, but this is quite the hike to get up here. So, James Marshall was the man who discovered gold down here at Sutter's Mill. If you look at the gravesite behind me, he's pointing, and he's actually pointing to the site where gold was discovered. So James Marshall finding gold was what started the gold rush, which is why we became a state, not a saint, a state. So thanks to James Marshall. But let me tell you a little bit about him. He was born in Hopewell, New Jersey on October 8th, 1810. And he grew up in Lambertville, New Jersey. And then in 1834, when he was 24, he decided to try his hand at farming. He had been trained as like an architect, but he wanted to be a farmer, so he went down to the Missouri Territory. And in the Missouri Territory, he got sick. Don't know with what, bird flu, COVID, cholera, who knows. It was 1840. And so he decided after he got sick that he would join one of those pioneer trains of hopeful West Coast pioneers, and that the climate change would help his health. So he went to Oregon, but Oregon wasn't really a warm enough climate for him. It still snows there. So then he came on down to California, and he went to Sac, which is where he met John Sutter. And he found work as a carpenter at Sutter's Fort. And then he was kind of a jack of all trades. So he ended up, working his way up the terrain a bit. And he owned land and had a lot of livestock and went back to farming. And that's how he met John Fremont. And through Fremont, he got involved with the Bear Flag Revolt in 1846, which was a failed attempt to get California territory away from Mexico. Like I said, it failed, but he and Fremont, and they had a few other bands of loyal pioneers who wanted California to be separate from Mexico. So they kept fighting in the Mexican War. So in about 1847, he went back to his land, and he found that while he'd been gone fighting, his house had been ransacked and all of his livestock had been stolen. At that point, he had nothing. So he goes back down to John Sutter, possibly with his tail in between his legs, and he goes, "Dude, I need help." So he and John Sutter formed this partnership. And the agreement was that Marshall would build a sawmill here in Coloma, just right down there. I can see the building from here. Marshall would build the sawmill. Sutter would fund everything needed to build the sawmill, hence why it was called Sutter's Mill. But Marshall would build it, and in exchange for payment, he would be paid with lumber, kind of get himself back on his feet. So he finished the sawmill in early 1848, and on January 24th, 1848, he's kind of wandering around the area by the sawmill, and he's like, "Oh, look at this pretty water." And there was something shiny in the pretty water. And it looked like gold, but he couldn't be too sure, right? Like, you gotta double check that shit. And so he does what any guy would do. And he takes the gold to this pretty girl named Elizabeth, whose dad was a prospector, and she decides to test it for him. So back then, the method of verifying gold purity was to leave the nugget in lye water overnight. And if it was still shiny in the morning, it was gold. So Elizabeth lays this nugget in this bucket or whatever of lye, and the next morning it's still shiny. So voila, Marshall found gold. So of course, that started the gold rush, and the gold rush meant great things for so many people and good things for California. But for Marshall, it wasn't super great because the mill ended up closing. There was nobody to work it. Everybody and their mother was off on the banks of the American River trying to find gold for themselves. So the mill ended up closing, and Marshall was once again left with nothing. So he kind of embarked on this nomadic lifestyle a bit. And he's going back and forth various places. He ends up settling in Kelsey, California, which is about 15 minutes from here. And he was living off of herbs and things sold and that he grew in his garden. So he died there on August 10th, 1885, and he was 74 years old. And even though he hadn't had the best turn of luck in recent years, people decided to bring him back to the site of his former glory. And so he was buried right here in this monument behind me, overlooking where he had found gold all those years ago. So now everyone in California wanted to make sure that he was remembered for his role in this. So this whole area is named for him. It's called Marshall Gold State Discovery Park or Marshall Gold Discovery State Historic Park, something along those lines. Um, his house in Lambertville, New Jersey, was saved from the wrecking ball, and it's now the site of the Lambertville Historical Society. His Marshall cabin is just down the trail a bit, and so everyone just wanted to make sure that he was remembered and honored for his role in California becoming a saint. So we all owe a huge debt of gratitude to James Marshall, and may he rest in peace. Thank you.